You are listening to the podcast of the Mathias Corvinus Collegium, the largest talent management institute in Hungary. If you want to know more about our mission, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels. For interesting articles and analysis of our professors, external contributors, and students, look up our knowledge base at corvinus.hu/en.
Hello and welcome to the MCC podcast. My name is Stephen Sholl and I am the head of international communications at MCC. I am joined by Thibaud Gibelin, a visiting fellow at MCC, and Yann, Caspar, researcher with MCC Center for European Studies. Today, we are going to dive into perhaps one of the most consequential elections in the aftermath of the recent EU Parliament elections, the recent snap elections in France. Last Sunday, France held its first round of elections, which showed a preliminary victory for the right-wing National Rally Party of Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella. In the next 30 minutes, our guests will not only offer their unique insights and analysis into this round, but perhaps even offer some predictions, not just for next week's second round of votes, but maybe even longer-term predictions for France and Europe. So, based on the preliminary results of the first election, we saw that the National Rally and its allies secured around 33% of the vote. The far left, New Popular Front, achieved 28%, and Macron's Renaissance Party achieved 21%, with the traditional center-right Republicans coming in at a distant 7%. Did you guys see any surprises with these results? Did any party do particularly better or worse than what was expected?
But the first surprise is the dissolution decided by Emmanuel Macron after the European election. This is the decisive change. And after we observe a contraction of this central presidential former majority, which arrive only now in the third position behind left wing and the right wing, very dynamic blocks. And this is where we do not have any clear perspective for French political future, because no one is able to exchange with the other. We have a growing revendication from a silent majority for protection, for security, for limited migration. But on the other hand, the far left is definitely in a projection for this convergence of fights for minorities, sexual minorities, for defending Palestine agenda instead of French politics, and this makes very unpredictable the political future of France.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. It's what we are facing is a real political earthquake. I think I even mentioned that this currently is the most interesting situation in whole Europe. But even if you take a look at the French history, I think that we didn't have such a interesting situation since maybe May 68. And again, it's what Thibaud said is completely true. In my opinion, the huge problem is that all the three blocks cannot communicate with each other. You have fractures inside the French society. You can see the map of the results. You can clearly identify sociologically what happened. So we are at the beginning. It's not even a political crisis. I really think that it's a regime crisis, which means that there are not just differences between the parties' debates. Here we are at the beginning of something that will contaminate all the institutions, which means that it's very probable that the country will be blocked. Thibaud mentioned the far left, the left bloc that is in favor of migration, of the minorities, etc. And the other side, you have a political agenda of Jordan Bardella that is asking for more protections and it's more social, etc. The huge problem is that all the scenarios are not really won't end with stability. The only way for Emmanuel Macron to stop Jordan Bardella is to try to do some kind of coalition with the left. We can see that within this left bloc, you have a lot of differences. It's true that people from left wing and the leaders from the left, they have very disciplined, they are very organized, but there is a lot of differences within this bloc on the Ukrainian-Russian question, on the situation in Israel, but also on the nuclear energy. So if Emmanuel Macron succeeds to form a government with the left, it won't probably last more than 3 months. Then in Jordan Bardella succeed to form a government, if he has next Sunday at the end of the second round a majority in the parliament, well, he will be facing the proactivity of all the institutions. The Constitutional Council will be against him. The Senate will be against him. Of course, Emmanuel Macron will be against him. That's not the first case in the French history. It's what we call, because it's a semi-presidential system. So it will be a so-called cohabitation government. But still, in the case of the National Rally, it will be very tough. So I really think that this is the beginning of a regime crisis.
Mm-hmm. And before we dive a little bit deeper into kind of the different competing camps, I think maybe for some of our listeners who might not be too familiar with the French electoral system, maybe it would be useful for us to go over briefly how exactly these elections are working. Because I think most people know now, right, there's 2 rounds. But what does that exactly mean? In the second round, do the top 2 parties that make it in each district go and they have to reach 50%? Or what exactly are the rules, and how might that differ from maybe what our listeners might expect?
That this is a very interesting point, and it's not only a technical aspect, because all the political strategy is based on this organization. So you have a second round, and everyone who got the first round plus than 12.5% of the registered number of voters on the list can accede to the second one. So it means that when you have a very strong participation, and that's the case last Sunday, you have a lot of triangulation. And this triangular election, it's 310 cases over 577 circumscriptions. So that's huge. We, of course, cannot guess what will be the composition of the Assemblée Nationale next Sunday, whether we accept the fact that everyone will maintain its position in this triangulation or will adopt some strategy. And here we have the decisive point. The point is that apparently no one is able to talk with each other between these 3 blocks. But in fact, we have a dual system, and this is the patriots against the globalists. The patriots, this is the Rassemblement National, and they are lonely and opposed against the coalition from the center left, Macron, and the far left, Mélenchon. And the situation is that according to the political parties, the political elite, that works. They want that, they call for unity, and they have this kind of apocalyptical vision of return of fascism and so on. But it's completely in contradiction with what happened in the street, in the life of the people, in the political culture of this different part of French population. For instance, Jean-Luc Mélenchon and all this left proclaim that Emmanuel Macron is worse than the Rassemblement National when he organized the reform of the pension system. But now, the former prime minister who enforced this law, this reform of the pension system, is candidate in Normandy, and the far left candidate will step back in order she wins and the Rassemblement National will lose. So this is possible for the nomenclatura, for the political elites, and it's not possible for, it's not acceptable in such a larger sense for the voters. And here we have this this dual situation in France, that and that ideology tried to maintain its position at the top of the state, but this ideology is ruined and already impossible to succeed in most of the French regions.
Yeah, this cordon sanitaire, which consists in a slogan or everything except the national rally. It's working at a rhetorical level and at the level of the leaders, and of course a lot of voters from the left will respect this cordon sanitaire, but not the majority. It's not working anymore, and that's why I was mentioning a regime crisis before rather than a political crisis, because all what is happening shows that this electoral system doesn't fit anymore with the sociological and electoral tendencies in the French society. So it might take years to change this, but I think that we are really in such a phases where this Fifth Republic with then the parliamentary election as a dual system, it doesn't work anymore, because now the Rassemblement National, National Rally, is over 30%. And actually, the results that they got Sunday, they got 1 million more votes than Emmanuel Macron at the first round of the presidential election, when he became the first candidate in 2022. So, well, it's a concrete example. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, which is actually a very contested leader within the left-wing bloc. He is really since a few years on a woke agenda, on a very leftist agenda, working with the French suburbs, where you have a population that is in a high proportion from extra-European origin, and that's a demographical and sociological fact. He said that, okay, I will withdraw all my candidates that are the third position, but I'm not sure that this will work in the reality. And we can take also the problem the other way. Emmanuel Macron, he is a political genius. He was a political genius in 2017 because he understood that this left-wing, right-wing opposition, it's fake. So this is the en même temps. He took, let's say, the liberal right, people with a lot of money, with working in the private sector, and the liberal left, people that's working in the field of education, culture, etc. And he put all this in one block. But this configuration is not working anymore, because now he has to compose with a far radical left. And his electorate, for example, old people that has money, that is afraid about the future, they don't want any radical change. They just want to have a cool few years that they have left. They won't vote for a left-wing, very far left-wing candidate that has a woke agenda. So the trick of Emmanuel Macron is not working anymore. And the other thing is that he's in the third position. He's at 21%, and a few weeks ago at the EP elections, he got 14% or something like this. So that's a complete disaster for him.
But yeah, we have to consider the complete change that happened in only 2 years' time. In the presidential and legislative election in 2022, Mélenchon was the junior partner. And he just had to support this Macron system, even if it was after the Yellow Vest crisis. So it's an anti-social liberal majority he had to support. And now this is Macron who is behind. So the strategy of Emmanuel Macron is that he tried to divide these left-wing blocs, splitting it between good leftists, what mainly very strongly support Israel, and Mélenchon, who support Palestine. And this diabolization, this denunciation of the devil somewhere in the left doesn't fit with the system, because the system works only with one devil, and this devil is on the right side. So not only it's not very well working, but it's already lost in a sense that Emmanuel Macron is far behind Mélenchon now.
And so, Yann, you had mentioned kind of some of the previous, maybe genius strategic decisions of Macron. And many people, when he called the snap election, were looking into it as like, okay, this is 4D chess. Macron is really just, he's going to somehow pull this out. Do you guys see this as some intense 4D chess move where Macron's eventually going to end up on top? Or what do you think his idea was behind calling the snap election? Was it a genius move, or is it something that is going to just end up disastrously backfiring for him?
We shouldn't be too naive. I think that when Yann told about he was a genius in 2017, he was a smart opportunist. But it's only based on short term, and his background is financial industry. So it's all based on very smart and fast decision, but only on short term. And the bank run is part of the strategy, but here this is his own personal life, and it's a disaster. The point is that when he replaced the former right-wing and left-wing governmental parties, he dismantled very well-rooted organization everywhere in regions, and the party he created is very far from this local life and all this political and associative ecosystem in France. So now it's an uprooted political formation. He was the only figure of it and the successful winner 7 years ago. Now he's the lonely one, and he has no basis in the society. So the decision taken after the European election is rather out of frustration and another short-term attempt, but that time apparently there will be no way to find maybe for his personal case as a president he will keep huge room of maneuver, because this is the French constitution that allows this situation, but there is no positive outcome, I would think, for the political stability in the coming years in France.
Yes, all the scenarios are bad for Emmanuel Macron, but he didn't have any other choices. I mean, this is his second mandate, so Constitution says that he cannot run for a third mandate, so it will end normally in 2027. So he saw that he had very low support, so his idea was to let the Rassemblement National Rally win and then show the whole country that they're not capable to govern. That's his idea. But still, that's very dangerous. When you give the power to your political opponent, that's a dangerous game. And on the other hand, if Jordan Bardella is not getting an absolute majority, or if he's too far, because you have 577 MPs in the National Assembly, so which means to have 50%, you need 289. Now, the most pessimistic projection for Bardella is 2050, which won't be enough, but I would say that even if he has 2075, then he can find an arrangement and find some MP that will collaborate with him. But if Jordan Bardella is not prime minister, Emmanuel Macron, it will probably take some weeks. He will find like a consensual a person that will lead a government from the left to the center or something not very stable. It will be, sorry for this expression, a complete mess. And Marine Le Pen will be elected in 2027 for sure. So for Macron, it's quite difficult. Other theories, option is that Macron dreams about a European or international career after 2027. Well, okay, but now when he is at a negotiation table, for example, with the Germans, they are saying, okay, Mr. Macron, Mr. President, you're a very sympathetic person, but please, first try to put some order in France, and then you will come with some ideas for the Ukrainian-Russian situation, for the agenda of the new European Commission. When you have chaos at home, you are very weak at the negotiation table at a European and international level. So I would say that in this case, it's also a very bad scenario for Macron because, for example, he was dreaming to be the head of the Commission and the Council in one block in 2029 and read some analysis of it. Best option is finished because now at a European level, he's a weak leader.
And so I'm curious, based on your analysis, for the national rally, do you think it would actually be best for them if they don't achieve a majority and they maintain this kind of minority where all they can do is critique the chaos and then come into power the next time? If you said essentially if it's a minority government, you predicted Marine Le Pen will then certainly win the presidency next election. So would it actually be best for National Rally to come close but not win the second round?
Well, yeah, those are very cynical approach, but this is the political game. Well, if we think rationally, yeah, of course, it will be best. It's in 3 years. The situation will be even worse, and they can have a higher legitimacy in 3 years that they have now. I think that they cannot become weaker. But, the strategy of Marine Le Pen and the National Rally since now 10 years, it's to look like normal. Because, as Thibaud said, during decades, they were the devil, etc. So they are trying to play the game as it is. They are following all the rules at the National Assembly. And when there is a lot of fight, at the National Assembly is the responsibility of the left-wing MPs and the MPs, the deputies from Marine Le Pen. They are really accepting the rules of the French Fifth Republic. So now it will be quite. It won't be logical. If they have the possibility to take the power, they should take the power because then they will like losers or people that are being coward, that they won't be in the opposition. So, of course, even if they are close, I think that they will try to find an arrangement with, let's say, 10 person from the center right, and it will be okay for them to form a majority and a government. And then serious things are starting, and that's the great plan of Emmanuel Macron. He will basically enter in a and he has a lot of constitutional tools to do that, and the support of the so-called civil society. We know what is the civil society. Civil society, when you go outside the big cities, people don't even know what it is. They are activists, okay? At least very organized people that are following the political agenda. The media, 75% of the media landscape in France, it's radically against the National Rally.
Rather 90%, I would say.
Now you have some radio and television and the internet. Okay, he's more pessimistic than me. Well, okay, let's say 80%. But it's no. My opinion is that we are entering a very phase of turbulences. It will be blocked, and the other thing, and maybe we can end on this. That's the most pessimistic scenario, but unfortunately, in the French political history, that's also a specificity when something is blocked, when the sociological, political forces are not able to communicate with each other. There is a tradition in France that it ends up in violence.
The position for Rassemblement National is a very decisive one. They wait for this momentum for decades. And not only they have this stabilization and this bigger credibility for a few years, but we observe the collapse of all the mainstream ideology of all this left-wing domination. But if what we call the boomer generation is failing, if this outdated liberalism tends to disappear, there is something new to replace it, which is maybe worse and more dangerous, and this is all this woke agenda of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. And the alternative is very clear. It's either this left-wing trend or try to restore stability and defend common good and the historical continuity in France alongside the Rassemblement National Relais. In this situation, the tactical approach, the cynical way to say, okay, we need to make it even worse in order to have a bigger victory. This is not something that fits the mindset of this French silent majority, which is exhausted. This is the people who made this yellow vest revolution in 2018. This is the people frustrated by the European federalization process since the referendum in 2005. So we have a kind of long run evolution already, and Rassemblement National cannot step back when the possibility is offered to make a change. Moreover, there is it, and it's an objective observation. There is very dramatic decisions taken by a left-wing government for a few years that lead France in a worse situation than any other European countries. We are in a worse situation after COVID and war in Ukraine than most of the other European colleagues, which have the same European rules, the same guidelines, the same limit. Emmanuel Macron himself sold the French nuclear industry technology to the US, to General Electric. So there is a kind of betrayal of national interest. There is this nomadist and globalist elite which despise the French people and the French history. And this is something that is already perfectly well known and understood by the Senate majority. So just this cynical point of view saying we will wait for an even bigger crisis may not be something that would bring any, of course, positive trend. Moreover, the Rassemblement National is facing a demographic challenge as well. Because it's true that now the Rassemblement National is the first in the demographic from the 35 years old to 69. Emmanuel Macron has only a majority for people older than 70. But the young people from 18 to 34, they vote for Mélenchon first. And Mélenchon is based on the voters from all this migration background. So there is this possibility that a day this native silent majority in France couldn't be able for a democratic victory. And this is what is at stake as well with this feeling of emergency. And last point, Jordan Bardella came from the suburb of Paris, this famous Seine-Saint-Denis, where European people are a minority for many years already. And he's particularly aware that this is the fatality, this is the destiny of his generation to save and maintain France as it was historically, or to jump in a completely new post-European civilization.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've talked a lot about these kind of left-wing bloc, the center bloc of the Renaissance, but we haven't actually really talked that much about the traditional right, the Republicans, who, actually only 10 years ago or so were still kind of the main right-wing force in the country. But as I mentioned, they've almost completely disappeared, at least as a significant force. But they did achieve around 7%. And when it comes to the second round, that definitely could probably sway certain districts one way or the other. Where do you guys think the traditional voters of the Republicans will go? I know their party leadership had basically a little civil war since the EU elections. I know about whether or not to support the National Rally. Where do you see their support ending up going? Will they end up supporting Macron as the center, or do you think they will end up supporting the National Rally?
Half-half, I think. Half-half. We have to mention that Eric Ciotti, president of this party, stepped out and to join not to join the National Rally, but my opinion that he will join it after this election, and then the Republican Party will just disappear or join Macron, because it is what they are. They have still a very important role in France, and they locally they have a lot of leaders locally. They are very implemented in the countryside, and they also have the majority in the Senate. But as a dynamic and an electoral force, actually they are dead since almost 10 years now. Or I'd say since 2017, since Macron. That was the genius idea of Macron. It was actually to apply a kind of populist approach, because since a few years now in France, we have two great populist leaders. The one is Marine Le Pen, because she's not talking, she's never using the word left and right. Never. She's saying people from above and from the fracture is vertical and not horizontal. In the reality, is more complicated than that. I'm talking about the rhetoric, and Macron was not using the word left or the word right. He was able to create this bloc a few years ago that is now falling apart. So I once said that the question of this Republican parties is very important. I think we should be happy that finally we arrived to the clarification moment that they will just disappear or form another party that is officially collaborating with Emmanuel Macron, because it's at the level of the leaders. You have people that are just dreaming to become ministers and MPs and so on, and the traditional electors, they are actually, even if they are not recognizing it, they are on the same page as Marine Le Pen, I think.
The Républicain, it's rather a sociological reality than a political one. It's the kind of distinguished people, well-educated, with this cultural, strong cultural asset, as French. They are part of the elites, and in that sense they are closer to Emmanuel Macron because Macron is at power. But their interest is within this Rassemblement National, or this part of the family that already joined with Eric Ciotti, this larger cooperation for right-wing or nation-based forces. So it's question of time to finish to dismantle this party, which has no ideological proposals. It's only a divided sociological bloc between people who still believe in that we can make this mix of left-wing agenda and maintain France as it was, and the one who decided that no, you have to make this revolution in your mind first and politically after, that if we do not reinvent the political spectrum, we will disappear as right-wing people.
Well, we are running a little bit out of time. So for my last question, I want us to look into the future a bit. And based on both of your guys' analysis, you almost both say either the national rally wins today or it wins tomorrow. You know, if they lose this election, then Marine Le Pen will win the presidency, at least in the next one. So I want to ask, what would a national rally-led France look like? And especially if Marine Le Pen were to win the presidency, because I know even if they win this election, they'd have to deal with Macron. So the idea of whether or not a prime minister with a national rally would even mean a national rally-led France, it's a bit debatable. But let's assume Marine Le Pen wins the presidency. There is truly a national rally-run France. They have control of at least the presidency and the main assembly. What would that look like? Would it look like Orban's Hungary? Would it look like Meloni's Italy? Or is Marine Le Pen her own individual person, and her national rally-run France would look different than any kind of right-wing populist-led government, however you wish to describe it, that exists in Europe today?
No, I don't think we can. Of course, and what is very important to mention, what is winning today in France, those are topics and angles that we are used to work with since years in Hungary. So of course there is an inspiration. Marine Le Pen came here a lot of times. So think we for the Franco-Hungarians relationship it will be better, I think. But politics is the art of compromise. If it's not compromise, then it's ideology or it's meta-politics, which is different. And when you have power, you have to make compromise. And the French people are completely aware of this, just that they prefer their majority prefer to have a compromise with Marine Le Pen than a compromise with Emmanuel Macron. That's it. So I don't think that we have to expect huge changes. And actually in the French society, you have tendencies, that is demographic, sociological tendencies that are very difficult to stop. We can also talk about France's international role, which is a disaster. And you take a look at the power that had French in the 50s, in the 60s. Well, actually, until the end of the Cold War, France has had a very particular and strong position. That's not the case anymore. So those are very, very heavy tendencies. And I'm not sure that you can stop these tendencies, but at least you can try a little bit to slow them or to change the direction, and that's probably what will happen from next week or in 3 years.
Very briefly, I'm not optimistic that we can only slow down tendencies. It's France is used to have this brutal revolutionary change, and that will be such a shift. We have this opposition of this elitist system against the people in France. And this is a kind of open war now. The voters of Jean-Luc Mélenchon represent an alternative kind of population, kind of culture, kind of civilization, and that would be the confrontation of these different tendencies without the former liberal common ground that we had before. So I would say that our future is very uncertain, and the Rassemblement National was supposed to restore the good old time of the 60s, 70s, but it will be up to him to create a complete new political environment, and for a complete different time, based on the dismantlement of global order and the end of modern era in Europe started at the end of the Middle Age. So this is this kind of historical complete shift we are facing, I guess.
Well, it sounds like whatever will happen, there's rough seas ahead for both France and the world at large. Yann, Thibaud, thank you for joining me today, and I really appreciate this insightful conversation. And we might have to do another one next week to dissect what actually happens in the second round. So thank you very much for joining us. To our listeners, thank you for listening in, and hope you'll be able to join us for our next podcast. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this MCC podcast episode. For further media content, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you want to read more by our professors, external contributors, and students, check out our knowledge base at corvinus.hu/en.